It's Patrick Hutzel from IntensiveCareHotline.com, where we instantly improve the lives for families of critically ill patients in intensive care, so that you can have peace of mind, real power, real control, and so that you can influence decision making fast, even if you're not a doctor or a nurse in intensive care. In last week's blog, I talked about having your loved one critically ill in intensive care. Follow your gut and intuition. You can check out last week's blog by clicking on the link below this video. In this week's blog, I want to talk about: is a meaningful recovery possible when your critically ill loved one is on the brink of dying in intensive care? Before I get into today's topic, I want to share a quote with you that I wrote on today's topic, and the quote says: when your loved one is critically ill in intensive care, only you and your family can give meaning to the situation. Even when the going gets tough, as it most likely will, you and your family are the only ones who can truly decide what meaning you attribute to this once-in-a-lifetime challenge when your loved one is critically ill in intensive care. This includes whether you and your family believe whether your critically ill loved one can and will have a meaningful recovery after their stay and their ordeal in intensive care. This goes hand in hand with whether you and your family believe that your critically ill loved one will have any future quality of life after their stay and ordeal in intensive care. Both terms, quality of life and meaningful recovery, are overused terms in intensive care, especially by the intensive care team who wants to stay in control of the interpretation of those terms. They are often using their interpretation of the terms quality of life and meaningful recovery to convince or even coerce you into believing that neither is possible or achievable, and therefore they try and sell you and your family on their mainly hidden agenda. The fact of the matter is that if you and your family believe that your critically ill loved one can and will have future quality of life and or a meaningful recovery, chances are that they will. That doesn't mean that the meaning you attach to quality of life and or meaningful recovery correlates with the intensive care team's views on the issue. However, the bottom line is that only you, your family, and your critically ill loved one can decide what quality of life and meaningful recovery means for you, irrespective of intensive care team's views and agendas. So, let's get into today's topic. If your loved one is critically ill in intensive care and is facing any of the following situations: they might be either very unstable and in a very critical condition, or they might be in a life-threatening situation, or they might be in intensive care for long-term treatments and long-term stays, including long-term ventilation, or they may be having a severe or traumatic head or brain injury, or your critically ill loved one may be threatened with an NFR, not for resuscitation, or DNR, do not resuscitate order, or your critically ill loved one may be in a situation where the intensive care team suggests a withdrawal of treatment or a limitation of treatment as being quote-unquote in the best interest for your critically ill loved one, or your loved one may actually be approaching their end of life in intensive care. In any case, there is a very good chance that you and your family are wondering whether your critically ill loved one can have any future quality of life and or meaningful recovery. And after more than 15 years intensive care nursing in 3 different countries, where I literally worked with thousands of critically ill patients and their families, and where I also worked as a nurse unit manager for more than 5 years, I have literally seen the difference between the very few families of critically ill patients in intensive care who had peace of mind, control, power and influence, compared to the 99% of families of critically ill patients in intensive care who simply didn't. And I can assure you that the very few families of critically ill patients in intensive care who have peace of mind, control, power and influence are also the very few families in intensive care who have a clear view on the situation and the challenges that they and their critically ill loved one are facing. And by that I mean that they have a clear view on the main issues that sooner or later all families of critically ill patients in intensive care have to face. And the issues that I'm talking about are mainly around quality of life and or meaningful recovery for your critically ill loved one. And again, those terms are way overused by the intensive care team for their own good. What does quality of life really mean? What does meaningful recovery really mean? You and your family need to decide, and nobody else. Quality of life as well as meaningful recovery are very subjective terms, and anybody who claims to have all the answers to it most likely won't. Intensive care teams think that they have all the answers when it comes to quality of life and meaningful recovery. The reality and the fact of the matter is that the minute a patient leaves intensive care alive, the intensive care team has no idea to what quality of life a patient will go on to, because there is no follow-up weeks or months later. Therefore, I argue that intensive care teams have no idea what they are talking about when they want to predict what future quality of life or meaningful recovery means for a critically ill patient in intensive care and their family. Again, the terms have been way overused by intensive care teams for way too long, with no real data to back it up what patients and their families experience after they have left intensive care alive. Quality of life for you, for your family and for your critically ill loved one can mean that you would be happy that your critically ill loved one can spend time at home with family even when dependent on other people for care. Quality of life and or meaningful recovery can mean that your critically ill loved one is going home on a ventilator with tracheostomy with the help and support of specialized services like intensive care at home. You can check out intensivecareathome.com.au for more information. And so that means with specialized services, your critically ill loved one might be going home on a ventilator with tracheostomy instead of staying in intensive care long term or longer than necessary. A meaningful recovery can also mean to leave intensive care alive and spend the last few weeks or last few months of one's life at home with loved ones and family, and approach their end of life at home, surrounded by family. And here I want to throw in another term that I believe is hardly used at all in intensive care, but I believe should be used more often, and I'm talking about the term quality of end of life. Again, a meaningful recovery in or outside of intensive care could lead to short but meaningful quality of end of life. The bottom line here is that you decide what quality you, your family, and your critically ill loved one want. The bottom line is that you decide what meaning you attach to recovery for your critically ill loved one. There is absolutely no right or wrong from a family or patient perspective. You need to decide. But it's not okay to use the perception of intensive care teams about quality of life and meaningful recovery outside of intensive care to dictate your wishes or desires. The fact of the matter is that there is way too much at stake for the intensive care team, or for any intensive care team I should say, to not be biased about quality of life or meaningful recovery, because the agenda of intensive care teams, what they say, how they say it, when they say it, is always a direct result of what's happening behind the scenes in intensive care. The agenda of the intensive care team and their perception about quality of life and about meaningful recovery is always a direct result of the politics, the dynamics, the psychology, the hierarchy, and the intrigue in intensive care. And if you and your family don't understand what's happening behind the scenes in intensive care, you will have a hard time to position your critically ill loved one and yourself in a positive light. If you and your family don't understand what's happening behind the scenes in intensive care, the intensive care team will continue to position your critically ill loved one's prognosis and their diagnosis in a negative light, and they will continue painting a doom and gloom picture. On the other hand, if you have a good handle and a good understanding about the moving parts in intensive care, and if you and your family can speak to the intensive care team like no other family in intensive care can, you will get the results you want, and you will be treated differently. Again, the intensive care team's opinions and views about quality of life and or meaningful recovery are in direct correlation in how they view you and your family, and they know that the vast majority of families in intensive care are weak and have no peace of mind, no control, no power, and no influence. The intensive care team knows that because you and your family have no clue about intensive care and the works behind the scenes, it'll be easy for them to sell you on their mainly hidden agenda. And again, what's happening behind the scenes in intensive care is almost always a result in how the intensive care team views quality of life and or meaningful recovery. Therefore, if you don't understand what's happening behind the scenes in intensive care, and if you don't learn to speak the secret intensive care language, and if you don't have a clear view about quality of life and meaningful recovery for your critically ill loved one, irrespective of the intensive care team's point of view, you can't be in control of your and your critically ill loved one's fate and destiny. So, how can you become the best advocate for your critically ill loved one, and how can you get peace of mind, control, power, and influence quickly whilst your loved one is critically ill in intensive care? You get to that all-important feeling of peace of mind, control, power, and influence when you download your free Instant Impact Report now by entering your email below. In your free instant impact report, you learn quickly how to get peace of mind, real power and real control, and how you can influence decision making fast whilst your loved one is critically ill in intensive care. Your free instant impact report gives you in-depth insight that you must know whilst your loved one is critically ill or is even dying in intensive care. Sign up and download your free instant impact report now by entering your email below. In your free instant impact report, you learn how to speak the secret intensive care language so that the doctors and the nurses know straight away that you are an insider and that you know and understand what's really happening in intensive care. In your free report, you will also discover how to ask the doctors and the nurses the right questions. Discover the many competing interests in intensive care and how your critically ill loved one's treatment may depend on those competing interests. How to eliminate fear, frustration, stress, struggle and vulnerability even if your loved one is dying. You get 5 mind-blowing tips and strategies helping you to get on the right path to peace of mind, control, power and influence in your situation. You will get real-world examples that you can easily adapt to your and your critically ill loved one's situation. How to stop being intimidated by the intensive care team and how you will be seen as equals. You'll get crucial behind-the-scenes insight so that you know and understand what's really happening in intensive care, and how you need to manage doctors and nurses in intensive care, and it's not what you think. Thank you for tuning into this week's blog, and I'll see you again in another update next week. Make sure you also check out our Your Questions Answered section, where I answer your questions, or send me an email to support@intensivcarehotline.com with your questions. Or you can call us. Find our phone numbers on our Contacts tab. Also, check out our product section, where you get more ebooks, videos and audio recordings, and where you can also get one-on-one consulting with me via Skype, over the phone or via email by clicking on the Products tab. This is Patrick Hutzel from IntensivCareHotline.com, and I'll see you again next week in another update.